You're the creator of the digital currency. It's currently the sixth largest in the global market cap. How did you get started with this?
I have a long history of interest in finance, and I've been programming since I was 15, and I got interested in economics and financial markets and things like that. I started by working for larger style corporations. And then a few years ago, I started tinkering with the stock markets and machine learning algorithms, and I was using economic models to try to make money in the markets, and I was selling those signals to investors. And so when I discovered cryptographic currency, I found that it combined all of my interests together in a really neat way. It's economics because you have to really understand how the money moves around these types of ecosystem because they're all self-contained, and it's different than anything else that you could get into. And then besides that, it is finance because it is money, and it takes some serious programming skills, and so it's probably some of the most complicated programming you can do. And so it's really intellectually challenging, and it was just neat. And when I saw it, I just instantly fell in love with it, and I wanted to learn more about it.
Okay. So what brought you to launch this currency? So
when I started looking into how Bitcoin works and how all of these other currencies work, there's some issues, and these issues really have to do with the core attributes of being money. And one of the attributes of being money is if I take out my wallet and I hand you a $5 bill or €5 or something, it doesn't matter where it came from before me. You don't have to worry about the history of it. And with digital currencies, you do. You could be getting tainted coins that came from a drug deal or things like that you don't want to be associated with. And so there's all sorts of little issues with the technology. The technology is just not finished yet. And so I thought I would try my hand at figuring out some solutions to these fundamental issues to make a better currency.
Okay, so was it your hobby from the beginning, or were you surprised at your success?
At the beginning, I was working a full-time job, and it was just a hobby. I was doing it nights and weekends, and I launched this coin named Xcoin at the time, and it was amazing because I didn't realize how much time it would actually take, and so it was consuming all of my spare time, and I just didn't have enough time to review the source, and I messed all sorts of things up in the beginning. And, it was more or less a disaster. And what happened was we got a community together, and these people really liked what I was trying to do, and they really liked the vision. And rather than letting the thing collapse on itself, we all worked together to try to make it succeed, even with all of the problems. And so we're really happy that it's still alive, and it's thriving, and we have a really good community and a good team, and it all just came from this just as a hobby in the beginning.
Okay, so you said there were some problems at the beginning. So if you could do it once again, what would you do different?
Absolutely everything would be done differently.
Okay.
Part of it is you just need to test a lot. These things, they're so complicated to run that you will find every single bug within the entire program as it runs because it's being ran by thousands of people. And so you need to test how the distribution happens. You need to test all of these little algorithms in great detail, and it takes a lot of time. And I would invest that time. I would get a team together even before the project began to lay out, milestones and the vision of the project, just to ensure that, there are no problems in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. So there are many more than 500 of these digital cards. What makes the Dash innovative and unique, in your opinion?
There's 500 of these coins, and there's only really 2 or 3 that are actually doing unique things. Most of them are just copies, and they get a bunch of people together, but they're not really doing anything with the code. They're not trying to push the envelope and to push what cryptographic currency can actually be. And so with Dash, it started with fungibility. We want to eliminate the risk of handing money to another person so they don't have to worry about where it came from. There's also other issues. There's issues like speed of transactions. You need to be able to compete with credit cards in the end. This whole space is probably going to end up competing with credit cards. So credit cards, you walk through and you're done in 2-3 seconds. And so in cryptographic currency, it can take anywhere from 10 to 60 minutes for a similar amount of confirmation. And so we need to fix that. And there's other issues like governance. How do you govern a currency that's worth $1 billion, especially one that's ran by only 7 to 10 people? You can't have all of the power at the top controlling a vast amount of people at the bottom. So you need some other mechanism for that. Funding. How do you fund something that's worth $1 billion and that needs maintenance? It needs a lot of software development. It needs a lot of testing. It has legal issues, and it needs infrastructure. It needs servers to run the websites, and it needs all sorts of things. It needs everything that a centralized company would need. And so these are the types of issues we're trying to solve, and we're trying to solve them all in completely decentralized ways. So in the end, we're trying to make the perfect decentralized project.
Okay, so how did you solve the infrastructure issue?
The infrastructure issue is an interesting one because all of these decentralized projects rely on volunteers. And so the way it works is if you wanted to donate some hardware, you would actually set up a daemon, and you would set up a server, and then you would just run this all the time. So what happens when the coin gets 500, 1,000% volume going through your server? It means that you might, instead of getting charged $10 a month, you'll start getting charged $50. And that might scare you off. You might shut down your server. And if enough people do that, then the health of the network starts going down, and it becomes attackable. Okay. And it can't support itself. And so you have to figure out a way that you could run a server and be compensated for it. And this is what we call the second tier. We have the first tier, which is the normal infrastructure tier that's in all of these decentralized systems. And then there's a second tier, and the second tier is compensated. And so you, as a person in the second tier, you would make $30, $50 a month to run a server that costs $10. And as the volume rises, your $30 income would become $50 or $100. And so it rises with the cost of the service that you're providing to the network itself.
So Evan, you mentioned that in many of these digital currency projects, there is a relatively small elite team that are actually working on improving it and maintaining it, and doing what's necessary to keeping it running, and looking after necessary faults that need to be corrected, and so on. How does that work with in the case of your team and in the case of Dash?
So we have something that we call a virtual corporation. And essentially what this means is we've taken the best attributes of centralized corporations. So in a centralized corporation, they have project managers, they have a dev team, they have a PR team, and so we've kind of organized ourselves like that. And what we've done is created these little small teams that work together in a close-knit group. And so I manage the dev team, Daniel manages the PR team, and then we have a couple project managers, Robert and Balu, that manage the overall project. And then we fund the project from the blockchain using innovative technology called the Decentralized Governance and Budgeting System. And so we're funded from the blockchain and we're organized like a centralized corporation, but it's all virtual. And our team is based all around the world. And the reason that this is a powerful model is you can add and remove these small groups. And so say somebody came up with a really neat idea for a decentralized exchange or something, and they fund it from the proposal system. Now they would add themselves to our virtual corporation, and we would start, the project managers would start managing their project as well. And if they needed anything with software development, they would contact our little dev group over here. And so it's expandable. We've turned the blockchain into something like a decentralized incubator that can pretty much grow unlimited.
Does that mean right now, if anyone who is listening to this interview has an idea and is inspired by this, that they can open up a project request in this way and they can get it funded?
Absolutely. So all you need to do to fund a project is essentially come up with a really good idea, and you document the idea in great detail. How much time it will take, how much money it'll take, who your team members are, and then you lobby the network for support for it. And the network will then vote on your proposal. If your proposal gets enough support from the network, then it's included in the finalized budget and then paid. Once it's paid, it's kind of like you're under contract with the network to do the things that you said you would do. And if you don't do what you said you would do, then the network can change their votes at any time and unfund you. And so it's a corrective system as well.
Is there? Do you have any tips for anyone to say? What are the types of people that you're most interested in funding? Who would fit into the Dash project best? What types of projects do you think that the network is looking for right now? What the network needs right now is a really stable core team. And what I mean by this is we have technology that is really advanced for a cryptographic currency, and no one really even understands the current state of our technology that's in the larger ecosystem. And so we want to get the message out there of what we're currently doing and what we currently have and the state of this. And so what we're looking for are people that have a knack for advertising, people that understand how to promote and how to do public awareness campaigns and things like this. SEO savvy people. And if anyone has these types of skills and they feel like they want to support the Dash project further, they can email me or any of the other team members by going to the website, and then under the team page we have all of our contact information. Okay, that's interesting. Is there a particular type of character or culture of the people that kind of naturally fit in and work seamlessly with the project as it is now?
There's definitely a culture within Dash, and I don't know how to describe it other than we have a lot of really good people that are on the team, and these are authentic people, and we all believe in the mission of Dash. And we believe that it will be successful in the end. And so we're looking for people with similar values that want to see something like this succeed within the space.
You mentioned the vision. Is there what you've said about the vision so far is one that's relatively technical? You want to achieve, making this digital currency, making Dash extremely functional and extremely successful. Is there also an idealistic vision in the sense that, say, what we know about Bitcoin and Satoshi Nakamoto's vision. Do you have something like that as well?
I definitely have a vision, and the vision of Dash is to make something that is more friendly to the mainstream. I think that if you set up the currency correctly, and all it takes is somebody getting out their phone, installing the Dash client, and getting it set up, and then they have to ask no questions about how to actually send money because it's intuitive, and they can invite their friends, and everything that's within this application will be intuitive so that it doesn't have to be explained to the people that are getting interested in it. And that is, I believe, how we can get a currency like Dash to go mainstream.
Okay. So I didn't hear any kind of like a political undertone or anything in the sense that, say, when Satoshi, released the code to Bitcoin, referring to the financial crisis or anything along those lines. Do you have something like that within the team as well?
Personally, I don't have a political motivation behind the Dash project. I believe it'll be incredibly helpful for the world to have a currency that is immune to some of the issues that we see in the larger economy. And I believe cryptographic currency in general and the entire space is really good for that. The Dash project, though, is more about just bringing this type of technology to the mainstream and doing it in a decentralized way. We're fighting centralization. We believe that none of the monetary aspects of a currency should actually exist in any centralized form within the currency itself. And so that covers everything from getting the money into the system originally. So it should be some sort of like P2P based system where you get your money in. And then any services provided within the system that are monetary based. So sending money instantaneously, sending money with privacy, and the maintenance and longevity of the currency should also be somehow provided for from the structure that we set up and the foundation of the project itself.
So you mentioned privacy, so I think that's worth mentioning as well. When you first launched, it was known, Dash was known by various other names, and one of them was Darkcoin as being the anonymous coin, and Wired UK called it the Bitcoin's nefarious cousin. Isn't there any type of risk in terms of how society might see that it might attract, to say, criminal uses and law enforcement to the users and to the developer team?
So we should back up a little bit. The coin was first called Xcoin,
right.
And there was a trademark issue with the name Xcoin, so we switched it to Darkcoin. The name Darkcoin was supposed to represent a blockchain that was dark. And biases are very, very powerful things. And I didn't realize this. And I was taught a lesson really quickly by how powerful somebody's bias is with a name like Dark. So if you attach Dark and Coin together, people automatically think of a hooded figure doing illegal things on the internet.
Well, yeah, I mean, point well taken. But even the fact that we have something that's a digital currency, mm-hmm. even if it's not anonymous, for example, Bitcoin is completely designed to be transparent, but people are already automatically associating, nefarious or attaching nefarious activities to mm-hmm. that, whether that's justified or not. So, quite aside from the name itself, the anonymous, mm-hmm. we can now say that Dash is arguably one of the most successful, truly anonymous digital currencies. That attracts a certain type of attention or risk. Are you concerned about that?
No, and I'll tell you why. If you look at other companies like, say, Google provides a search engine, and you could do bad things with their search engine. You could go and search for all sorts of illegal, terrible things. And the reason that law enforcement and that no one is taking an active interest in trying to shut Google down is because they're making a tool. And tools by themselves do not have an intention. People give tools the intention that they're used for. And so it takes a criminal to use a tool to do something illegal. And Dash is a tool. Currencies can't be used for illegal purposes without someone using them for an illegal purpose. That's the freedom of the person to do what they wish to do using the currency. As far as privacy, I think it's inherently a human right, and blockchain technology is just too public. And so we either have to take away the privacy from the masses, which I don't believe is the right choice, or we have to give privacy to everyone. And that will allow some people to use Dash negatively. And I think I'm okay with that because it's their right to do things, and it's the law enforcement system that is going to be responsible for bringing people to justice that are doing illegal things using things like Dash.
So would you agree with me if I said that sounds a little bit like, say, an ideology or even a political statement, a standpoint that you're taking?
Sure.
Okay. So having said that, I think that it probably is very predictable that at a certain point somewhere in the world that there will be law enforcement or authorities taking great interest in either certain groups of developers or creators of coins like this, as well as in the end users, because you said it like you said, it would be the people themselves and how they're using it that could be criminalized. Then these powers may want to discourage the use of Dash, for example. How would you react to that?
Well, again, in the end, we're either going to have something that's completely public and where everyone is identified on the network, and it's akin to having your checking book, public for everyone to see on the internet, and none of us want to live in that world. Or we all have something that is inherently private, and where we can have criminals doing bad things within these types of currencies.
You have a team that is distributed all over the world and have all gotten behind this mission. At some point, the code actually, any improvements to the code has to be committed into the actual production of Dash, into the system itself. Isn't that done in a centralized way?
We're moving into a system where we would have multiple branches, each of the team member working on a branch, and then they do a pull request to the main project. And then there's discussion within GitHub. And once there's consensus within the project, then we would merge it into the main branch that the project lives on. And so what we get is conversations, and we get decentralized consensus within the team for commits.
Okay, and if there is some contention among the various development teams on what should be done, and something is committed that has some contention, would the system itself reject the update? Does that happen automatically right now?
That's more of a human side to the project.
Right.
Let's say I merged something and the community was really mad that I merged it. What could happen is we could make a proposal using the decentralized governance and budgeting system and ask the network, should we go this way with this branch, or should we go this way with this other branch? And then the masternode network, our second layer tier, would actually vote. And there's up to 3,200 votes, so we would get an exact answer as to should we do A or B. And then if they decided that I should revert that commit, I would.
But it is possible that they could, theoretically possible, that they could vote one way and that someone, for example you, would not follow the vote?
Absolutely. And in that case, they could actually defund the core team. And so there's corrective action that can be taken by the network itself. And by defunding the core team, I mean, we are paid a salary from the blockchain itself. And it's only by the votes of the second tier network that it is approved and put into the budget. And so they can change those votes at any time. And they could change it, and they could elect a new core team, which then would replace us.
By money.
Yes.
So, but then someone with more money would have to I don't know, stage a raid on your password or something. How would that actually physically work?
Well, it would work because the core team can't operate without. Well, eventually the core team won't be able to operate without money. The first and second generation of programmers and developers are a little bit different because we're voluntary. But I would say in 10 years, they'll all be making, salaries because they won't have any other incentive to continue working. So if you cut off all of the funding from a team, they can't survive without the funding, and then you fund a different team and replace them.
Right. It seems right now that the current system is very, very happy with the team that you put together. What type of people are, where are they from? What are they doing? What types of profiles? What type of people are you looking for to join the team?
It's a really amazing thing what happened, and it just all happened organically. And, it's the power of decentralized systems in action that we're actually seeing here. The core team is full of people all around the world. So we have a Panamanian, for example, and I just met him face to face for the first time this last week in the Netherlands. Then we have somebody from Hungary, Balu, and we have someone from Switzerland. His name's Robert. He does the project management. We have people from Europe. We have somebody from Germany. His name is Holger. And just all over the world. So it's incredible that you can make a decentralized system that functions as effectively and efficiently as ours does. And none of these people have ever met face to face, but when we get together, it's pretty incredible because we just all naturally just get along.
How did you actually solve the governance and the funding question? That's something that is often discussed in the Bitcoin community as issues. But your Dash community says that now you've technically solved that issue. How did you do that?
So we have something we call the second tier, and it's essentially the compensated part of the network that provides the infrastructure. And when you sign up as a member of the second tier, you have responsibilities. You are essentially an employee of the network. And some of your responsibilities are to provide the services for the network. And these are services like providing our instantaneous transaction confirmation implementation and the fungibility of the network. Another one of the features is the decentralized governance and budgeting system. And this is a feature that's built on the second tier itself. And what you do as a member of the second tier is things are proposed to the network, and you're part of the network at that point, and you have one vote per proposal. And there's 3,200 members currently that are in this second tier. And so we can have up to 3,200 votes per proposal. The proposals with the most amount of support within the network are the ones that get funded. But these actually don't have to fund things either. They can not pay anything out, and they can just be for deciding things on the network as well. And so that's why we call it the governance and funding system, because it does both.
How does a virtual corporation in the Dash system actually work right now?
It's just split into very small teams of about 5 people, and then we have a few tools such as Slack. So we work on Slack all of the time, and we have private channels for our subgroups within the virtual corporation. And then as things happen within the virtual corporation, we have meetings about them, and it functions like exactly what you would think a regular corporation does, except it's just all virtual and decentralized. And we also use tools like Skype. So we're planning on starting to have weekly meetings we'll have a core meeting, so we'll have probably 10, 15 people online at once. And it'll be something like in normal project management of software programs, there's something called the stand-up, where each person on the team gets up, they say what they're doing, it takes about 30 seconds to a minute. And if you have anything blocking you from being able to work, you voice that, and maybe somebody on the team can help you through that. And so we're introducing these types of systems of organizing the project. And then what's really cool about the virtual corporation is we can publish these things. So we'll have a website, and our Skype meetings will be public. So anyone that wants to know exactly what's going on in the Dash project this week, they can go look and they can watch all of these meetings and keep up to date. And then we can compile all this information together and do weekly digests of everything that's happening within the project.
So you can watch it by following along what's been documented, and some of the discussions are public, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, and of course when something is actually realized or done or voted on, that's also transparent and public as well, correct?
Yeah, the governance and funding system is completely trustless and decentralized technology. And so it means that any node on the network can go look at the results of it themselves. And so all of that is completely 100% transparent.
Is that also anonymous and transparent at the same time?
It's pseudonymous. So if you're not a known identity on the network, then you can vote anonymously on these proposals.
Okay. So your identity is not attached to it, but an entire voting record is visible.
Yes.
Someone knows that someone voted, but they don't know. They can see how that person has voted over time, but they can't see who that person is unless they identify themselves to the world.
Exactly.
Right. I understand that Dash is supposed to be very fast in terms of the transactions that it's capable of supporting. What is the transaction speed of the Dash network?
Part of the second tier is allowing different functionalities like our instant transaction implementation. And the way that it works is really simple, actually. We have a system that we call the subquorum system, and it can be thought of as a decentralized oracle. And per transaction, we actually create a decentralized oracle on the network. And the decentralized oracle is made up of 10 masternodes that are pseudo-deterministically selected using some mathematical algorithms. So of the 3,200 masternodes, 10 are selected, and then they become a panel for this transaction. They either decide if it's valid or if it's not valid. If it's valid, they can issue something called a transaction lock. And it means that you can't spend that transaction to anyone else other than who you promised it to. And in the Dash network, we refer to transactions as promises because they are. When I give you money on the network, it was under the assumption that the money would be valid. And on our network, we can actually guarantee that when you do give someone money, it is valid because no one else can double spend the transactions that happen through this implementation.
What kind of new projects, new types of Dash-related businesses do you see now being developed that look interesting?
There's a thriving ecosystem that's based off of the current infrastructure of the Dash network. And it's interesting to look at because it's just popping up, building around the technology that we currently have. For example, you can go start a masternode using one of these masternode hosting services. And you don't even have to set up the server, you don't have to manage it. If there's problems with the installation or something happens, they'll contact you to have you reissue the start command. And things like that are popping up all over the place. We have a few of those, maybe about 5 companies that have started competing within the ecosystem for the business of hosting these masternodes.
So you host a masternode and you're able to vote, you have some vote,
Mm-hmm.
correct? And then you also earn some incentive back, some Dash is paid back. So when you invest in a masternode, you also get something back. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Why is that interesting? What advantage does that give, both to the network and to the individual?
It's actually incredibly important to making a decentralized system. The point of Dash is to try to make the perfect decentralized project. And the issue with these decentralized projects is that they fail under their own weight eventually. As they start to succeed, their success is actually the greatest issue. And the weight of the network starts to put pressure on these volunteers. Volunteers eventually get tired of volunteering their hardware because it costs money. And as the network starts to succeed, huge volume starts going through it, and you start paying more and more and more. Well, what if you could make a system where it wasn't voluntary? And instead of volunteering your hardware, you would get paid and compensated for your hardware. And that's essentially what we've created. It's a system where you can become an employee of the network and provide these services for the network that solve some of the fundamental issues of these decentralized systems and how to operate and scale them.
In Bitcoin, we have a mining industry. We have an industry where people are actually producing specialized hardware exactly for the Bitcoin network. Is there anything similar? How does it work with Dash?
There's definitely mining hardware that's being worked on. In Dash, we run a different algorithm than the Bitcoin network, and it's called X11. So we have a vast array of GPU miners. And these people basically just mine using the GPUs, and they're more your mom and pop type miners. They're not super professional in nature. And we kind of like that because we put Dash into the hands of a lot of people and not just a few huge industrial type operations.
But do you see that then changing at some point, and that there will be specialized chips?
We imagine that we're going to go down the same path as the Bitcoin project did. About this time in the Bitcoin's project, they had started working on FPGAs.
Right. And
that would be the next step for us, and then ASICs after that. And so we wanted the natural life cycle that they went through, and so that we could build in the same super healthy way that the Bitcoin system was built.
You say that that's healthy? That not everyone agrees with that. What makes you say that it's healthy?
I think it's healthy because at the beginning you start out with CPU miners, and they're one class of people that are getting currency out. And then the next class of people are GPU miners, and they actually might be different people than the first people. And then the third class are FPGA, and those are also different people. And then you have the ASICs, and the first set of ASIC operators are also a different class of people that probably weren't mining the GPUs. I mean, some people might carry through this whole cycle, but I think overall you get Bitcoin in the hands of more people by the end of the cycle, rather than just starting off with one class of hardware and then people buy it and then that's it.
What you see in Bitcoin is that the mining corporations that we have now that are quite big and have very specialized hardware, that they're concentrating more and more the power, the processing, the hashing power into smaller groups. You don't see that being any type of an issue or risk? I mean, it's going to force out a lot of people, like you said.
Sure, it's a huge issue for Bitcoin.
Right.
It's not a huge issue for Dash because of the second tier. The way that it will work in the Dash network is the miners generate the proof of work hash, but they don't pick the transactions. And when you make a promise to somebody using the instant transaction implementation, you can't put any other transaction into a block. And so it takes a lot of what these miners are doing to secure the network away from them. Instead of actually picking which transactions are valid and which ones are not valid, they just find that proof of work hash. And then all of the security after that comes from that really, really secure number. And then we inherit all of the security of this entire network without having to actually trust them. And so we use code which actually then fills the blocks instead.
Are there any other issues that you're working on solving now, in addition to the ones we've mentioned? We talked about speed, we talked about governance, for example, and fungibility, and so on. What are the other things that you're working on?
There's a couple more issues that I see causing larger issues later on within the Dash project and with decentralized projects in general. And one of the issues is anyone that I talk to that's completely not technical, they have no idea how to use Bitcoin because these really long strings freak them out, and it feels dangerous when you first use it if you have no understanding of what's going on. And we intend to fix that. And so I would call this the ease of use problem. It should be intuitive for anyone that wants to get involved with it. The other issues are, how do you scale this decentralized thing that we call the virtual corporation to the point where it's 1,000 people or 10,000 people? And we think we have ideas of how to do that as well and keep it incredibly efficient. And then there's other issues with how do you make our fungibility implementation faster? Because it's kind of slow right now. It takes a few hours to actually make the coins fungible again. And how do you make the instant transaction implementation better? How do you make it faster? Things like this. That's what we're actually currently working on.
What other types of businesses or projects? You mentioned that you can run a master node, for example, and you mentioned that you may eventually expect to see new types of hardware developed specifically for the Dash algorithm. What other types of things do you expect to see now or are already being built now?
Well, so for the first 2 years of the project, we were just building the infrastructure. And now that we have that built, I think we're moving on. The startup of the project was just trying to figure out how to make this scalable system and how to build the masternode network and to get the technology into a place where we could actually get some user adoption from the outside. And there are other interesting businesses for the infrastructure, but I think it's more interesting to look at what's going to be coming from the outside. Because what can you do with a perfectly fungible currency that has instant transactions? And I mean, for example, you could make a bot that runs on multiple exchanges and transfers money around doing arbitrage, which could be neat. Or the banks could use it to transmit money between them instantaneously. All sorts of different things. And that's not even mentioning just using it as a monetary vehicle. By using it just to transmit value, you could walk into a store and buy something and then walk out 3 seconds later, which is pretty neat because you're only using decentralized components within the Dash network. And I feel like that's actually really important.
You mentioned that a perfectly decentralized monetary instrument was one of your stated goals. That this would be one of the advantages. Are there more advantages? What motivates you really to create that?
The idea is that if you interact with the monetary vehicle Dash, you shouldn't ever have to interact with a centralized entity if you're doing anything that's on a monetary level. So if you're transmitting value, if you're making contracts within Dash, or if you're doing anything on the blockchain itself, we should provide those services. And by us providing the services, we give more flexibility to people because they can use them directly. And you also can get money in and out of the system in a decentralized way. This is another one of our goals. And we feel like Bitcoin got so big so fast that they probably wanted to do things like what we're doing, but they couldn't because they didn't have the flexibility to work on the really core parts of the code because they felt like it could cost them billions of dollars. And it could have. They were right to do what they did. And we're trying to build what they couldn't build because of the just sheer amount of popularity that they received after making their project originally.
Well, it just brings to mind now that you have an incentives system and you have already a very large number of nodes relative to many of the other altcoins, that you may also find yourself in that situation. Is that a risk?
What situation?
Yeah, where you're as big as Bitcoin and or so big that it becomes difficult to make those adjustments.
The goal is that once we're in that position, that we have all of the decentralized technology in place and that we don't have to tweak it anymore. And so that's what we're trying to do right now. And that's why we took the first couple of years to build all of it before even doing any PR at all. We don't want a huge amount of people coming into the currency when it's completely unstable and can't really support what they're trying to do with it. But now we feel like the technology is at a place where it would be okay for that to happen. And we know where we're going now. And in a year or two, we'll have the complete vision done and the technology that does pretty much everything that we're talking about here.
Is this the Evolution release that you've been announcing in Amsterdam?
Yeah, and Evolution's going to be an amazing thing that we're building. It brings instant fungibility, so no one really has to wait for trying to anonymize coins on our network anymore. And it brings anonymity for everyone within the network. Only where you want it, though. So if we do business together, you can see what I've sent you, and I can see what you've sent me, and things like that. Also, if I send you money, it's instantaneous. We figured out a way to bring the instant transaction implementation down from 1 to 4 seconds to about 100 milliseconds. And if you can imagine how fast that actually is for a transaction to confirm, it's pretty impressive. And we're building a new type of system where we're going to have vast amount of storage on the masternode network itself using something we call shards. We'll have shards on the network, on the masternode network itself, and this will allow us to store terabytes of data redundantly as well. And so no data will be lost, and we'll have something that we're going to call archive nodes that store all of the data. And we can actually fund these with our decentralized governance and budgeting system as well, because they'll be rather expensive to launch. They'll have to have 35 terabytes of storage, but in any situation where we lose a little bit of data, they will be on these specific types of nodes, and we'll have those all over the world as well. So that's also decentralized.
What is your experience? What is it like to actually create a economy out of nothing? There is now a Dash economy that's almost worth $14 million in market cap. How did that happen? How does the network create that money?
It's a really strange thing. Essentially what happens is a bunch of people get together and they decide something's worth money. And once everyone has the realization that money can exist as a digital asset on the internet, and once you realize that money can exist pretty much anywhere and anything, it's ethereal in nature. And by making Dash and just starting the project itself, you create a form of money. And the money is, in essence, the confidence of the network, or the confidence that the people have in the network. And it's that confidence over time that you cultivate. And you do that by making the technology better and by trying to solve the problems within the space. And you asked how it feels to do something like that. It's kind of strange to have a token that goes from being literally worthless to something that's worth something.
Right.
And it's pretty neat, but it takes a lot of work. And it's by converting the work of myself and the team over the last couple of years and the entire community at large. It is that work that gave those coins the value that they have today.
So with a traditional currency like a dollar or a euro, we have a central bank and a government that's deciding how much of those bills should be in circulation. How does that work with Dash? What are the rules behind the Dash economy?
the rules behind the Dash economy were decided really early on, and they're coded into the system itself. And it would take pretty much the second tier network to probably vote on it to change those at this point. And we have about a 150-year distribution plan where every year there's 7% less distribution going out to the network. And then it curves down over time and eventually will run out. And so as that happens, we want to continue to give the masternode network and the second tier network some sort of incentive to continue to function. And so what we're planning on doing is providing other services that the masternode network could actually own. So they would invest in things and they would offset the lack of distributed coins that is decreasing over time.
So are you saying that it's similar to Bitcoin, that it's ultimately there will be a limited supply?
Yes.
And what's the magic number?
There is no magic number with us. Our supply, the amount of money that's created per block is a floating number, and it floats based on the amount of difficulty. And so with really low difficulty, we could see upwards of about 18 million coins. With really high difficulty, we could see a reward more about 14 million. And so it's in between those two numbers.
Somewhere between 14 million and 18 million would be the maximum number of coins that we'll have. And when do you think we will reach that maximum?
It'll take about 150 years.
So we're expecting for it to be around for a long time.
Yes.
How does someone actually apply to join a core team or become part of the inner circle of Dash? How did the people that are in it now, how did they join? How did they apply? And how do you expect in the future the new people will join?
What usually happens is we have our Slack, which is where the team lives and where all of the volunteers live. And on a weekly basis, we have about 50 people on there doing different things for the project. And someone would start volunteering time, and it could be for anything. And if we really like what they're doing and they're good at it and they seem like they fit in, then we actually would offer them a spot on the core team. And so it's not something that is something you can apply for. It's something you really have to work for.
So it's not that if someone sends you their resume that you're interested in based on their background?
No, I would definitely invite them into the Slack project, and
right.
they could then work on it and see if they like to work on the project and see if they can contribute good quality code, for example, under my team. Or if they wanted to do marketing under Daniel's team, or anything like that. And if they do really good work, then they would be invited in.
Is there anything about Evan Duffield that would be interesting for people to know, that the man behind Dash?
I listen to a lot of Spotify.
He takes the dogs for a walk, or Doberman.
Yeah. I do like to exercise as well.
What kind of exercise?
I like to ride my bike, and I would love to start jogging more. I enjoy jogging when I can do it. I have 2 dogs, and they require a lot of walking every day, so I do that a lot.
What kind of dogs do you have?
I have a German Shepherd Australian Heeler mix, and a gigantic 90-pound Doberman.
And what are their names?
Brayburn and Gala.
Okay, Evan, thank you very, very much. Evan Duffield, the creator of the Dash cryptocurrency. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.